This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, did you know that you can watch episodes of the PR Podcast? That's right, as though you couldn't get enough on your favorite podcast platform, listening to it on your earbuds or wherever you are. You can also check us out on YouTube. We post video versions of the podcast. So now you can see the guests that we talk to. You certainly don't want to see this face made for radio, but our guests are lovely people and you want to look at them as much as you want to listen to them. So check us out. Just search the PR Podcast on YouTube. There are lots of PR podcasts, so make sure you find the one with our orange logo. And check that out. We post those episodes on every Monday morning, right alongside the audio versions that they're on the podcast platforms. So that's on YouTube at the PR Podcast. Check us out there as well. Now on with our show today, we've got a terrific guest from right here in New York. Kourtney Jason is the president and co-founder of Pacific & Court, based in Brooklyn, and she has previously worked with major celebrities, world-renowned chefs, and best-selling authors, including Martina McBride, Valerie Bertinelli, Chef Todd Richards, today's Siri Daly, New York Times bestselling author Sid and Shay McGee of Studio McGee, among many others. She's also an author. She's written 5 nonfiction books, including Lights, Camera, Booze, Drinking Games for your favorite movies. We're going to talk about that, which was included in the Academy Award swag bags, and we definitely want to hear that story. Kourtney, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Jody. I'm so excited to talk.
I want to hear about your PR career, but I first want to hear about this book. So you've got 5 of them that are on Amazon. The latest one is called Lights, Camera, Booze, and you had me hooked at the video trailer that's online. Tell me about that.
Thank you so much. That's certainly been one of my best sellers in terms of books that I've written myself. I guess that came out almost 10 years ago, which is wild to think about the timing. I'm a pop culture fanatic, so I love anything relating to the pop culture world. Similar to you, coming from a journalism background, I started my career as an entertainment journalist. So going on to the book side of things, I loved having that merger of pop culture and journalism. So yeah, I wrote that book with one of my dear friends. She is, that co-author, Lauren Metz. She's the reason I moved to New York. She gave me my first job at 17 magazine. And so yeah, we wrote this book. 30 different movies, all sort of cult classics, nostalgic pictures. Each movie is its own sort of chapter, with trivia, with rules for the drinking game as you're watching the movie, and then little sobriety challenges for the end.
It sounds great. We're going to link it in the show notes so people can click and go straight to it on Amazon.
Thanks so much.
It looks like an absolute blast. Now, tell us how you got that book into Academy Award swag bags. That is probably no easy feat.
Yeah, so in the PR world, there's, certainly that option for pay to play. So a lot of the gifting suites, you do pay to get into them. So through the independent publisher that I was working for at the time, Ulysses Press, I worked in-house in their PR department. And one of the perks of working for the company is that you can pitch yourself to write books. So they also published Lights, Camera, Booze, and all sort of kept it in the family there. But yeah, so through my PR work, we worked with different gifting suite agencies and would pitch different books that had sort of that pop culture feel. We pitched, different cookbooks that had, sort of a movie or entertainment context as well. So yeah, we worked with different agencies over a few years to place books in different gifting suites and swag bags. So here's hoping that, there's some Academy Award winners that have that book sitting on their shelf too.
Well, and there's one of the added extra or peripheral elements of PR that we can sometimes do, right? It's not just the straight up media coverage, whether it's the newspaper or the TV or the magazine or even online, but it's things like that, getting a book into a swag bag to target a particular audience. Is that what drove you to get it into the swag bag?
Partly, there's the additional media coverage that comes after too. Like Us Weekly at the time would always, have a swag bag that they would do giveaways for. for their readers. So they would get one of the gift bags, do this beautiful product shot. And so then it was additional media coverage that I could share with the publisher. So it was just really this beautiful full circle opportunity.
Very smart of you to know that getting into that swag bag, which is an accomplishment in itself,
Yeah,
that then it would also yield more media coverage. And
exactly.
there's a great example of what we do when we're working on all cylinders, right?
Right. It just, you never, so you sort of hope that these things will turn out, but then when they really do and you get to see it come to fruition is like, okay, that was worth the money spent as well.
That's fantastic. Good for you.
Thank you.
Now, we ran down in your bio some of the folks that you've worked with. And those are some top tier names, top tier celebrities. Celebrities, whether they're chefs or entertainment personalities or what actors, actresses, what have you, you work in some fairly ego-driven verticals, right? You can have some really strong personalities in the work that you do. And I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to blame anybody here, but it's the truth, right? I mean, I've worked with some of those egos as well. How is it working with folks at that level of their game? They can probably be very specific about what they want. They can probably be very demanding about what they want. How do you do you take a special approach to those types of personalities in one, getting them what they want, and two, maybe steering them away from something they don't want or they shouldn't be wanting?
Certainly. And you're so right with that question. There are a lot of different personalities, but then there's a lot of different personalities with their team. So personalities that go beyond just the author. So it's really making sure that you're maximizing their time. It's making sure, okay, is this opportunity worth the value, worth their time, worth, going to give us the results that everyone's expecting? You're not going to have an A-list celebrity waiting in the lobby of a magazine building for an interview. Like that person that's doing the interview should already be there. And then the celebrity just walks in and is ready to do the interview. So it takes your client relations up to a level that I hadn't experienced before working more with independent authors. So really working with those celebrities and with those teams, you learn a whole different world of how these relationships should function. And it really takes your, author relations to the next level to, understand that their time and how much, work that they do, and that this book is just part of their, multi-hyphenate sort of career, right? Like the authors that I worked with, they're authors, but they're also actresses and musicians. So this book is not their, number one source of income, but they certainly still want to make it a success.
You said something really critical there, I think, about learning how to do this, right? This
Hmm.
negotiating and deal and working with these folks who are at the top of the game. So, like we said, they have the right to demand top tier service. But that can be intimidating if you've not been through it. Do you have any recollections of being a younger professional and sort of the first time you ran into one of those egos, either how you handled it or how you learned from it, and advice you might give to young people coming up?
I would say I've certainly shed some tears of my own of, other well-known publicists saying what was, maybe shouldn't have happened. Maybe that author waited too long for that interview to show up. But it's all a learning point, like I was in my early 20s when that happened, but have I still held on to that and made sure that that has never happened again? Absolutely.
Yeah, you burn those things into your subconscious, and you're like, I'm never doing that again.
Exactly.
Or I'm learning from that one. Yeah, for sure, for sure. You had when you reached out to me and asked to be on the show, and I jumped at the opportunity. You wanted to talk a little bit about thought leadership programs, and it's such an overused phrase, right? We know this. Everyone wants
Mhm.
to be a thought leader. At the same time, there's great value in positioning someone to be a thought leader or subject matter expert, or the sort of the person who you go to in that industry. You have a particular strategy that you wanted to talk about with thought leadership and how it cuts through the noise of everything that's going on out there.
Yeah, so at my agency, we primarily work with nonfiction. So I would say like 95% of the books and authors that we work with are in the nonfiction space. So a lot of that means, we're not typically working with novels where the campaigns are more focused on, book reviews and it's not author driven. Nonfiction, I always joke you can't interview a book, so who's the person behind it? How do I position this person to still get coverage for their media, for their book and their book launch? But it's really about who they are, what they can talk about. You can use that book as a business card. So whether that's using the book to get those media opportunities because the book has that newness value, it has the publication date, it's a new, tangible product to give to the media for coverage. But what's the author talking about? How can they really sell that book? What are those messages and that service that readers can take from the book? And through that, it has to come from the author to really sell it, to take, to give that audience the insight of this book will help your life in X, Y, and Z ways. So whether that's, tying it to something specific in the news. Most recently, I was working with an author who has a book about parental self-regulation. So really how to handle your emotions when you're a parent. During our campaign, the US Surgeon General released his statement that parental stress is a serious epidemic. I jumped on that angle immediately and got the author a few interviews that week. So it's, really sort of figuring out what differentiates you from the competition. What are your key messages? How can you help people? How can you actually provide service and improve their lives? And using that through, the book campaign.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, I've done the tiniest sliver of book publicity in my career, and I've worked with a couple of authors. But there's more opportunities, as you were explaining there, than just promoting a book because it's new, right? And you gave that example of the Surgeon General. How, I'm going to ask a really poorly phrased question, but you're going to understand where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
You know, you promote a book when it's new, but then how can you continue to promote a book after it's not new anymore? And how long is the shelf life of new? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? What is it?
It completely varies. So with, our most standard campaign is usually around 3 months. So that might be 6 to 8 weeks before the publication date, with 6 to 8 weeks after. I typically start a campaign with the book pitch. So that's, really focused on this book is new, it's coming out in a few weeks. We have the author available for interview, but, I also want to get the requests for review copies to really get those book review features, the roundups, things that do tie to the book. By the second week of the campaign, I'm immediately transitioning into author-focused pitches. So whether that's, really tailored interviews for podcasts, here's, 3 different topics that they can cover in an interview. Here's, guest articles that they can write, where it all still goes back to support the book, but really puts that author, more centered, more focused. In terms of other sort of timelines, we work with a lot of cookbooks at the company. So even then, I'm looking at those silly little national food holidays, right? So I was working on a bread cookbook this summer. It came out, I believe, in August. But did you know that September is National Sourdough Month? I didn't until I looked it up. That gave me a great way to pitch different specific sourdough recipes. November is National Bread Making Month. The book has 30 recipes. You know what you can do in November? You can bake a different bread every single day of the month. And so I pitched that as well.
Such creative ideas there. Yeah. And it goes to show that it's not just, I love what you said too about not just pitching the book, but pitching the author, and maybe pitching the author not as the author of the new book, but the author who can speak on a particular topic. And then you sort of backdoor the book in, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we certainly want the coverage for the book, but we're also looking for service angles and opportunities to position that author. And even when we start our campaigns, we talk to the author about their different goals. So whether it is to get more sales, or is sales their number one goal, or are they really looking to raise awareness to a particular cause or topic? Are they looking to grow their business? Are they looking to be known as an author? Or are they, looking to even bring more clients into, whatever their consulting or speaking business is? So depending on what those goals are, that also tailors, the directions that we're going within the book campaign.
Yeah, really smart. And so let's bring it back now to the ego-driven kind of client service here. Do you ever pitch some ideas that you just described and you get the pushback saying, I don't want to talk about that? And how do you walk them through?
That's interesting. We've worked with quite a few memoir authors, and there might be things that they're, a little more nervous to talk about depending on how personal it gets. But it's always making sure that the interviewer is prepped on, hey, this is a more sensitive topic, so let's make sure that this is handled with care. And really doing your research on, who those writers are and how they've written about it in the past. In one at a previous agency that I worked at, I was sharing a campaign with a colleague, and my approach was certainly more sensitive, and her approach had been a little more clickbaity, and the author recognized that. And so it was, a discussion that we had to have as a team about, how are we actually positioning this?
All right. Can you tell us who won out?
I think I did.
Good for
I
you.
mean, yeah, there's, you want to be sensitive and tell someone's story the way that they want it to be told as well.
It's a really good point, and that goes back to kind of what we were talking about before about counseling the client, because that's a big part of what we do as PR people, whether you're book publicity or anything else. Educating the client as to what you don't want to do, or just helping them make good decisions. And as my old boss Howard Rubenstein used to say, "You good press follows good decisions." So if you make those good decisions, you'll end up getting good press.
That's a great philosophy, and I'm going to write that down and take that as well. Yeah, and even with authors that, we work with a lot of first-time authors, so they're not sure about the media process. There's media trainers that I work with pretty regularly that have, worked wonders with clients. But also with those clients that might be, not have their messages perfected, then I sort of recommend let's start with some long form podcasts where you're talking about it for an hour. You can sort of figure out the best way that you want to say these things. That way, okay, you know how to talk about it in an hour, then we can go to a 30-minute interview, and then that will help you prepare for that 4 to 5 minute TV segment where you have to be as quick as possible with your key messages and, really be succinct with your words.
Yeah, media training is a key part of what you do, I'm sure, with your clients, and such a great perspective that you have there about letting them warm up a little bit, letting them take some batting practice, for lack of a better phrase, with something that's just not that it's not important, but that it's maybe a little easier to do, right? And they can ease into it just the way you described.
Exactly. And to be able to go, deeper with what those sort of topics are, having that long form discussion to, not just be at the surface level of the book, but be able to go, dig into the meat a little bit more.
So great. All right, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. You don't have to drop names, but do you have a favorite campaign that you've worked on? You told the story about the bread. Is there another favorite one that you sort of just have in the back of your mind and you're always like, man, I did such a great job on that one?
It's still an active campaign. So from the previous agency that I was at, this author, Sherry Lead, followed me to, as I was launching my own company. She, now we've worked together for the last 4 years. We're working on her fourth book launch now, and that comes out in February. It's called Table for 51. So in 2023, she traveled to every state in the country to meet with a stranger and have a meal and find their similarities, find, how they could make connection. And this, ties back into the loneliness epidemic that we have in the country right now. And so her book coming out next year is, the story of her travel while she was also going through, personal challenges. Her 26-year marriage was ending. So it recaps, these 50 different meetings with strangers with her personal diary at the same time. And she had no media experience when we started working together in 2020. And last year we had her on the Today Show, and she knew that it was very much that PR was a sort of staircase. So every sort of opportunity that we had would lead to the next one, and we could just keep building on that staircase. And it's just been an absolute dream working with her. I think we're sort of this dynamic duo, and can't wait to see where we'll go next.
Don't you love it when clients get it? They really.
Yes, and I'm so grateful because the media trainer, Paula Rizzo, that we worked with for Sherry, Sherry was like, Paula, I'm not sure what I should do. Should I stay at this agency or should I follow Kourtney? And Paula's metaphor was so perfect, and I'm forever grateful for it. Was, well, when your hairstylist leaves the salon, do you stay at the salon or do you follow the hairstylist? And Paula was like, and Sherry was like, that you are so right. Then I will follow Kourtney.
All right, I'm stealing that one. You can take Howard's and I'll take that one from you. That's a good one. Absolutely. I totally agree.
So perfect.
That's so wonderful. Well, Kourtney, it's clear that you're really, really good at what you do. And we're so glad that you were able to spend some time with us and share all these great tips. Anybody out there working in book publicity, I hope you were taking notes. And if you didn't, rewind, listen again, and take those notes, because I'm certainly going to take some lessons away as well. We're not quite done with you yet, though, Kourtney. We are going to segue now into the other portion of our podcast, which is what we call the rapid fire section. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two. With your indulgence, Kourtney Jason, let's begin with rapid fire question number 1. What is your favorite news source?
I am a Today Show girly every morning.
Fantastic. Rapid fire question number 2. What's your favorite social media platform?
I am a millennial, so it has to be Instagram.
I still love Instagram. I love TikTok, but I always go back to Instagram.
Same.
Rapid fire question number 3. Coffee or alcohol?
An iced mocha in the morning and a glass of rosé in the evening.
Sounds like good balance. Rapid fire question number 4. What's your favorite on-the-run food?
I am from California, so I desperately miss my Mexican food trucks that I grew up with.
There are a few of those around Brooklyn, I'm pretty sure.
We do. We have a couple.
There you go. And rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Maybe my own best-selling author.
That sounds like a plan. I like that. I'm sure you will. And you'll be able to promote it for free, which is great.
Yeah. Book topic to be determined. I don't know what the content will be, but it's in there.
I love it. I love it. Well, Kourtney, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Awesome. Our company website is pacificandcourt.com. And then I'm pretty easy to find, Kourtney Jason, on most social media platforms.
Sounds good. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Thanks again, Kourtney, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Apple. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.